Welcome to Same Spit, Different Face TV. Well, my opinions is facts, and if you don't like my opinions, you can start your own podcast. And it's free. So don't forget to spit on the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification. Now, Spit Squad, hindsight is 2020. What do I mean by that? A couple of jurors came out and said that Young Thug would have been found not guilty as well. It was two black ladies that was on the jury, and they basically said they didn't know anything about him before the music, but the way that they were looking at the prosecutors were trying to make his lyrics appear to be everything. And that's one thing about that case. And one thing, the first thing I'll say is one thing that I hate about the grand jury. I hate the fact that the prosecutors are allowed to go to the grand jury and give them all of this information and basically say, hey, this is what we have. And now the person can be brought up on charges. And now once they go to court, they have to shift through those charges, which makes no sense because if y'all never heard this saying, they say you can indict a ham sandwich because it's one-sided. That's a real saying. Google it, look it up. That's something that prosecutors say. That's something that defense attorneys say. You can prosecute a ham sandwich because the standard to get somebody not prosecute them, but the standard to get somebody in court on charges is very low. So imagine this, if you go in court as a prosecutor in front of the grand jury, and remember the grand jury is secretive. Nobody know who they are. It's in a courtroom. Though the grand jury is just there by themselves, and the judge is there and the prosecutor is there. So it's no defense attorney to come out and say, hey, these lyrics that they actually showing you right here, these lyrics that they trying to make seem like was released in 2024. What they won't tell you is that this song was made in 2019 before this situation even happened. It's a lot of different stuff like that. Like even when they got on the stand in the Young Thug case and the quote unquote expert said, hey, it was no way that the car could have moved after he was killed because he was shot and he was killed instantly. Well, when you look at the video, you see that the car moves, then it stops, then it moves again, then it stops. And like 3 or 4 cars pull up next to this car. So they don't know who actually shot at this car because this car was still moving as different cars moved past them. But if you are the prosecutor, you're allowed to go into the grand jury and you able to show only a 5-10 second clip of that video that makes it look like, hey, this guy pulled up next to the car. We see the car stop. We see the car jerk, and that's it. Now look at the brake lights. That means that the guy's dead now and he's not moving. Oh, this is from the coroner. The coroner said as soon as he got, and so all of this stuff that gets settled out in court that turns out to be like not compelling evidence. If you allowed to go into the grand jury by yourself and only present one side, it looks like compelling evidence. And so those two women basically said, yo, we didn't put any bias or basis on the lyrics. We looked at him as someone who pulled himself up from his community. And one of the biggest things about the RICO charge that Fonnie Willis brought against him is that they tried to use a lot of social media. They tried to use not only a lot of social media, but they also tried to use a lot of lyrics. They also tried to use a lot of hearsay. Basically, like, oh yeah, Lil Woody said, oh, I wasn't there, but they told me this happened. That even though that's first person knowledge because he hang out with them, is still considered hearsay, my bad. But he's a credible witness because he hangs around these people. So it was just they really messed that case up. And I personally, when I saw Young Thug about to take the guilty plea, I was like, man, he should definitely just stay on this trial because it looked like they didn't have anything. But I think one thing you have to take into account now, if this Tory Lanez case wouldn't have came before this Young Thug case, I definitely believe he would have stayed on the case, right? But the issue is that, you know, a lot of times when you see other things fall out in front of your eyes, you be like, you know what? I'm just going to take the easier path because in that Tory Lanez case, we saw Megan Thee Stallion had lied a lot. We saw that the witness had changed his statement. We saw that they had inconclusive DNA on the gun, all of this type of stuff. So we looking at it from the outside in and we like, oh, they ain't got nothing. Tory finna walk free. But then Tory gets found guilty. So if you Young Thug and you watching that, you saying, well, I've seen a case where they had no evidence, or where it looked like they had no evidence or little evidence, and it looked like the jury was gonna be able to decipher between what was going on. But he ended up getting found guilty. Now, if you Young Thug, you get found guilty of this RICO charge, you get life in jail. So you can't really go through with that. You can't really play it out. I think that he should have, but like I said at the beginning, hindsight is 2020. Now, the other thing that's very important is that his trial was had inside of Atlanta, right? And why is that important? A lot of times when you have different trials, like when you look at the O.J. Simpson trial, they moved his trial out of L.A. to somewhere else. I can't remember, but why is that important? Because the demographics change if you move this trial to another area. So by you keeping it in Atlanta, not only do you have a chance of getting somebody who look like you on the jury, but you also get a chance to get somebody who understand the things that you've been through, who understand how police railroad young black man every day, who understand how police get on the stand and lie. And even when they spoke about the gang experts, how you gonna be a gang expert based off YouTube videos? Like, how are you gonna be a gang expert based off of training that you get from police? How can a police tell you what gangs are doing? Now, if you would have came on that stand and said, hey, I'm a gang expert because I was a detective for 30 years and I spent 15 years undercover inside of this faction of a gang, or I was a detective for 15 years and while I was a detective for 15 years, I worked with 5 of the top ranking members of XY gang in order to find out secrets such as handshakes, such as signals, such as terminology. That makes you a gang expert. You can't sit down in front of a computer and then be like, yo, I watched a couple of 1090 Jake videos and I watched a couple of academic videos. I watched a couple of same spit videos and now I'm a gang expert because of the things that they break down. That's not a gang expert. And so I think one thing that the Fulton County would have to do is they would have to go back and actually start a gang curriculum where they maybe get some snitches, where they maybe get some people who are retired gang members, and they basically build up from there and get something that's really tangible. They really fumbled this case. They wasted a year and a half of taxpayers' money in Atlanta, and I really don't understand how Fonnie Willis got reelected. That one lady who basically could have gotten elected, she didn't really run hard enough for office. She made a splash by basically saying, hey, this prosecution is wrong. If anything happened with this, I'll jump in there. Now, the one thing that Young Thug can do that would actually be great, right? So obviously, and this is like about Donald Trump, right? As a president, you can pardon somebody, but you can only pardon them for federal crimes. Well, this is a state case, but where does this come into alignment, right? The state of Georgia, the governor is a Republican. So if Young Thug was able to talk to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump, you know, all the Republicans fall right in line with Donald Trump. So if he went to the governor and said, hey, I need you to pardon this guy. He was done wrong by Fonnie Willis. Fonnie tried to railroad me, et cetera, right? And then you look at that situation where we could see Young Thug getting off of this case. And I don't know, after you take a plea deal, if you could get an appeal, maybe not. But that is another thing that he could possibly be looking into. And when you look at Brian Steele is well respected around there. He's a great lawyer. He's probably been a lawyer for some politicians or maybe even some politician kids. So maybe he can be pulling some strings in like the next year or two where we can see Thug get pardoned for this crime, because it was obviously a witch hunt. And the thing that I personally see that later on, they may even try to go after Fonnie Willis, because it was alleged that Fonnie Willis had a relationship with Donovan Nutt Thomas. And if she had a relationship with him, that was biased and she shouldn't have even brought the case up. And especially after so many people got found not guilty. So when you look at this situation, it's just, it was unfortunate that Thug had to take a plea deal, but he did what he felt was best for himself, and we'll see just how this maybe turn out in the appeal process, because he has 15 years of probation. And even though I didn't like Judge Whitaker a lot, the one thing that I did like about her is that when Young Thug did his blind plea, she didn't go with the state's suggestion of giving him 25 years. And that's one thing that happened a lot, that, you know, the state, and I think it's vindictive behavior, right? The state may go to you and say, hey, you facing 50 years, but we'll give you this plea deal where you take 10 years, you walk and you come back, or you take this 10 years and we'll give you 5 years time served, and then you'll serve the rest of the 5 years on probation. But then when you go to trial, they recommend that the judge give you 50 years, and the judge be like, okay, well, let's give them 50 years. I think that's so stupid, because you were just willing to give them 10 years, but now you want 50 years. And that's what Judge Whitaker saw through. Judge Whitaker was like, why would I give him 25 years and you guys were just willing to let him walk? He couldn't have been that big of a threat to society. So anyway, that was just my breakdown of what was going on with the jury. But the jury definitely feel like they would have found Young Thug not guilty. But at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, hindsight is 20/20, and nobody had been sitting in there for a year and a half like he was. They don't know what he was going through, what his kids was going through, his family was going through. So he did what he felt was best for him. Check out my original Chicago hood movie in the end screen, No Time to Play Fair.